Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
If we're allowed to not wear a mask, I will be walking around maskless for the rest of my life, not even gonna lie.
We have 2 bedrooms that are available readily. There's also a recreational room downstairs that we can definitely convert into another bedroom if need be.
It was a great chance to get some exposure. It's hard to get published as a young writer, so this was just an incredible opportunity.
Thanks for joining us. Ontario is dropping most of its mask mandates and a number of other COVID-19 restrictions later this month. And the clock is now running down on workplace vaccination mandates. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the details.
Go into any mall or grocery store in Ontario right now, just about everybody is wearing a mask. The days of this happening are numbered. The province's mandatory masking rules in shops and in schools end on March 21st. Why? Ontario's top public health doctor says it's because the risk from COVID-19 is now lower.
And because the risk is less, our public health recommendations have to be proportionate, they have to be balanced, and you have to recognize you can't mandate masking forever.
The messaging on masks is shifting too. Instead of saying everybody should wear them to protect others, the onus to wear a mask is now on those at greatest risk from COVID.
If they are vulnerable to this virus, if they've got any underlying illness, if they are immune suppressed in any way.
Other changes coming for Ontario? All workplace vaccination mandates end this month. Then, all remaining emergency orders, including mask rules on public transit, in hospitals and long-term care, will expire April 27th. That's exactly 1 week before the election campaign begins. Moore insists that has nothing to do with today's announcement.
My decision-making and recommendations to government have not been affected by any understanding of the political system.
While Dr. Moore speaks, Premier Doug Ford is 100 kilometers away to announce money for planning the redevelopment of Brantford's hospital. Why isn't he making the mask announcement along with Dr. Moore?
I just don't feel I should be out there trying to steal his thunder.
Still, Ford has thoughts on the end of mandatory masking.
It's going to be up to the people of Ontario. If you want to keep your mask on, keep it on. If you want to take it off. But we have to move forward from this. Like people are exhausted.
And he denies this move comes too quickly.
You know, we've been super cautious. As a matter of fact, I've been probably accused of being the most cautious leader in North America when it comes to this pandemic.
Asked how confident he is that Ontario won't get hit with another wave of COVID once the mask mandates end, Ford says no one has a crystal ball. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Brantford.
And this, of course, means big changes for schools and students here in our community. The CBC's Jason Vio joins us live now in studio with more on that. Jason, what are you hearing from school boards and staff about the changes announced today?
Well, the local president of the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario says the province is moving too quickly. He doesn't want to risk another lockdown and says some teachers are concerned. Now, instead of lifting a number of measures all at once, the union president says it would be smarter to start with things like allowing cohorts to mix and permitting more in-class group work. Evaluate the effects of those changes, and then he says make a determination on whether or not it's time to lift those masking requirements.
Right after the March break doesn't sit well with our teachers. We think a more gradual approach would be in the best interest of students and staff. We think that this is a risky approach, and we would like to see something more cautious. We all agree that it's time to start looking at releasing the mandates on masks, for example. But there are other measures that I think the government could have focused on right after the March break that would have made a lot more sense and would have worked our way towards, releasing the mask mandate.
Now, at the local English Public School Board, they say masks will no longer be required starting March 21st, and cohorts and social distancing will also be done. At the English Catholic Board, they anticipate to implement similar policies, but will take a few days to get a better understanding as to how this will affect both staff and students.
Jason, what about those students? What do they think about these changes?
Well, we received mixed reactions from high school students today, some relief, concern, and a bit of excitement.
It would probably give a lot more freedom, like with people being able to choose whether or not to wear them, because they do make your face oily and stuff and can get quite uncomfortable.
I'm kind of excited, but kind of not, because you might get infected, but it's also, it'll be a lot easier to focus and breathe when you don't have the mask on, and you can actually take deep breaths and you're not as flustered because you have this thing on your face.
I don't want to wear a mask. If we're allowed to not wear a mask, I will be walking around maskless for the rest of my life. Not even gonna lie.
Now, the next step in Ontario's reopening will come on March 14th. That's when mandatory vaccinate or test policies end for workers in schools, childcare settings, and hospitals, as well as long-term care. Individual organizations can keep their own requirements in place, and most hospitals have said they will continue their strict vaccine mandates. The local health unit also didn't take any questions on all of this today, but sent out a statement late in the day saying people need to continue taking the appropriate precautions because the pandemic is not over.
Thanks for this, Jason. CBC's Jason Vio live in studio for us tonight. Moving civilians out of harm's way continues to be a key challenge in Ukraine. Officials say localized ceasefires have opened up evacuation corridors out of several besieged cities.
It was so terrible, and my parents, I left my parents in Sumy. I hope I will see them another time.
It is estimated about 7,000 people have been able to escape from the northeastern city of Sumy. Many are not waiting for buses and are leaving in their own cars. And thousands have fled the devastated city of Irpin on the outskirts of the capital, Kiev. Most are being forced to leave through the ruins of a bombed bridge. And Russian forces continue to attack civilian targets. A children's hospital in Mariupol was hit, and it suffered extensive damage, and the number of casualties isn't known. Mariupol was one of the first cities to be cut off by the Russian invasion, and it has been without power, water, and heat for nearly 2 weeks. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Germany as he continues a European tour centered on building support for Ukraine. He met with German officials and spoke with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, and Trudeau pledged more Canadian support for Ukraine. CBC's Travis Danraj has the details.
Much of Berlin was destroyed during World War II. The Brandenburg Gate was not. A symbol that endured the last major crisis in Europe still stands as Canada's Prime Minister visits while the world grapples with another.
When Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he violated Russia's international treaties, and he attacked the values that form the pillars of all democracies. This kind of brazen disregard for law and human life is a massive threat to Europe and to the world.
After meeting with German Chancellor and NATO partner Olaf Scholz, Trudeau pledged $50 million in additional equipment to be sent to Ukraine.
This morning I spoke with President Zelensky and highlighted once again the strength and determination of the Ukrainian people, and told him that Canada will soon be sending highly specialized equipment to them, and invited him to address Parliament in Canada.
But there have already been logistical challenges getting shipments of military aid into the country. Trudeau says he's aware of the issues at the border, but they're not insurmountable. The trip thus far has been heavy on photo ops and meetings with NATO partners, but how any of it will substantially help the people of Ukraine right now remains unclear.
And the fact that the Prime Minister has been able this week to have direct conversations with our leading partners around the world is absolutely essential.
Trudeau wraps up his visit to Germany tomorrow morning after having breakfast with the German president. He's set to meet with more leaders in Warsaw, Poland tomorrow, including U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who is also in the region to show her support and discuss what's happening in Ukraine. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Berlin.
As the crisis rages on in Ukraine, Windsorites are coming up with more ways to help. Some are opening the doors to their homes, and others are helping by gathering much-needed supplies to send abroad. CBC's Ashta Shetty reports.
Growing up Ukrainian, it seems like it's the right thing to do.
When the time comes, this family says they're ready to welcome Ukrainian refugees into their home.
Well, we have 2 bedrooms that are available readily. There's also a recreational room downstairs that we can definitely convert into another bedroom if need be.
Meanwhile, other Windsorites, including Natalia Kachor, are rallying support and gathering supplies for their home country.
Wound care, first aid kit, bandages, painkillers, antiseptics. I know that there is a big need on diapers, like baby's formula, warm clothes, but I would like specifically, because I have some medical background from back home, so I would like specifically to be focused on medical supply donation.
She says Windsor Regional Hospital has provided her with a number of items on her list. She's also reached out to the Ukrainian Canadian Medical Association of Ontario to try and send medical supplies in bulk at least once a week to Ukraine. Meanwhile, a nurse practitioner from Amherstburg is using her skills to help provide humanitarian aid. She's a part of a Canadian team sending a cargo plane with medicine, and she's ready to be deployed if needed.
They're trying to determine how many team members we should be sending in and what role they will have. Will they be ICU nurses? Will they be surgeons? Will they be psychologists and dealing with some of the post-traumatic stress? The other thing is that we have heard is that cargo plane will be returning with refugees.
The United Nations says more than 1.5 million refugees from Ukraine have crossed into neighboring countries in less than 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the Canadian government is waiving most typical visa requirements in preparation to welcome an unlimited number of Ukrainians fleeing the war. Here back home, this group, seeing rallying last weekend, will be hosting a town hall this Sunday. The local Ukrainian community wants to give Windsorites a chance to ask them questions and learn more about the conflict in Ukraine. Ashta Shetty, CBC News, Windsor.
A Ukrainian-Canadian TD Bank customer is wondering why she was charged a $50 fee for sending money to help with Ukrainian relief efforts. And she has been told she will get the money back, but this after CBC News approached the bank about her situation. And as Angela King reports, she's questioning why she was charged in the first place.
Every little bit is going to help here.
Last week, Christine Rusek went to her local TD branch to donate $1,600 to help Ukraine's army, but she was charged a $50 transfer fee to do it.
The next day, I started to think about it and realized that this was not right, that some people might only be donating $100, and for them to be charged a $50 wire transfer fee may actually dissuade them from making that donation.
She contacted TD, and after CBC News reached out about the situation, the bank said she'd be reimbursed. TD is now temporarily waiving transfer fees for money being sent to Ukraine, joining other banks. And as of today, all 5 major Canadian banks are doing the same.
It is something that the banks can do very, very specifically that can show their support for Ukraine.
When Rusek was charged the fee, her money wasn't being wired to Europe, but to a Toronto BMO branch that's collecting all Canadian donations for a fund set up by the National Bank of Ukraine. Money raised goes to Ukraine's army.
Literally, these funds will keep people alive.
Ihor Michaelchishin is the CEO of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress and says the fund is buying gear like bulletproof vests and helmets.
It's just critical to ensure that 100% of those dollars get to where they're intended.
He says it's inspiring to see how many Canadians are helping as he continues to check in with loved ones in Ukraine.
It's an unreal, surreal situation to sort of have to have a daily check with your friends and family on if they're alive and how are they managing. And we're doing everything we can to help them.
Michaelchishin says he's happy the major banks are temporarily waiving fees and is calling on all of them to retroactively reimburse those who donated before the policy changed. BMO, TD, and RBC are offering refunds based on different dates. Scotiabank and CIBC didn't say whether they'd reverse fees. The 5 major banks have donated a combined just over $1 million to Ukraine relief efforts. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Back to local news now. Protesters who blocked the Ambassador Bridge caught the attention of the Gordie Howe Project. Officials say they've reviewed emergency plans following the week-long disruption in February, but they don't expect to make any changes to the design or construction of the international crossing.
But what it has given us is the opportunity to go back and think about our own emergency response planning and to work with the other authorities, the transportation authorities and other security authorities, the road authorities in the area leading up to the Gordie Howe International Bridge, and start having some discussions about what our own emergency response plans would look like.
The Windsor Public Library is reviving zine culture with Pagination. It's a 36-page booklet of collage art, poetry, and flash fiction. Zines are usually reserved for more experienced writers and artists. The library is making the practice more accessible.
I just wanted something interesting that was different from new emerging writers and artists, and also some that maybe aren't new, that they've been doing it for a while. I just wanted to compile it, mix it all up, and see what came out.
Each piece is contributed by a Windsorite who submitted their work looking for an opportunity to get published. And for many of the contributors, like poets and graphic designers, this is the first time seeing their work in print. Others are more experienced, emerging writers who are thrilled to have the opportunity to make a contribution.
It is extremely encouraging. It's been a goal since I was a little kid. I always wanted to be published, and it was something I worried I'd never be able to do. So it's so incredible to have already hit that milestone, and it's kind of addicting. Now that I know I can do it, I want to look for more opportunities, and it's really built my confidence and kind of sense of self-worth in my writing. So it's been amazing.
So many of my friends would be in this zine. I just wanted to be part of it. I always loved zines since I was a child, and it's a piece of ephemera that maybe it won't be largely distributed, but the few of us who will have it will be able to like look through and say, this is, you know, our generation in Windsor in 2022, this is our writing, and I wanted to be part of it.
I'm part of the creative writing program, so my whole program is revolved around like the creation of poetry and stories. So it's nice to finally reach over and get the feeling of being published for once, and it's kind of exciting seeing it actually in print. Yeah.
Now, these zines, they are free, and you can pick them up at local library locations for as long as supplies last. There's not that many of them out there, but don't worry, they're already working on the next issue, and that should be out next month. And there is a live look outside at that bridge there, those beautiful sunset colors. A gorgeous day today, and then tomorrow, a sunny 6-degree Thursday is on the way. Colette will be here after the break with more. Colette Kennedy is here now for a look at our weather forecast. Colette, it is starting to feel like spring and look like spring and smell like spring. Please tell me it's here to stay.
Yeah, exactly, right? We're getting all this tastes of it. And then, you know,
hope.
Exactly. And there's just going to be a few occasions where our hopes will be dashed because it is March. But yeah, we're kind of slowly getting there. And a -2 was our low this morning, up to 7 degrees for high, you know, really close to seasonal conditions. And because the sun isn't setting till 6:30 now, and by the way, it's going to be a little later than that because we're going to put our clocks ahead as we get towards this weekend. But it means we hold the heat a little bit longer into the afternoon and early evening. So still at 6 degrees, and those winds now starting to make that turn towards the west. They were more of a southerly or southwesterly flow. We do have a weak cold front that goes through tonight, and it's weak, so that's why we're not seeing really strong winds, but you probably notice the arrows changing direction, that we'll get behind that front more of a northerly flow. Now, in a few cases, there'll be maybe the odd flurry coming off the lake, but that should stay out of our skies in southwestern Ontario. That risk, though, possibly, I should say, to Sarnia over towards London, a greater risk a little further towards the north and east. But we know we can't stay in an inactive pattern for long, and we don't. So let me kind of walk you through what happens. Now, I do see more cloud cover coming into our skies tomorrow, just going to keep the temperature maybe down. I think we'll be close to today. And then what we'll have to see is this next system that's going to be developing, and that's more for Friday. But ahead of it, we could see a few flurries, a bout of some flurries that Thursday night into Friday morning, then kind of a break, the main system not here yet, and then it really starts to develop. And as it does and moves through, the heavier snows looks like will be to the east of us, but I'm watching really carefully because we could pick some up significant into the Windsor area too. Right now it looks like it's further east and a 5 to 10 centimeter situation there. Overnight tonight, the lows -5, -6. You see what I mean by just keeping it a tiny bit cooler tomorrow than today because less sunshine. And then as we look ahead towards Friday with that snowfall, flurries lingering into Saturday, there's the colder air that's going to come in. It's kind of 1 day, 1-2 day that we'll feel it's colder. And just that reminder, you go to bed Saturday night to set that clock ahead and we lose an hour.
Exactly, which always messes me up, but it's worth the payoff.
Me too.
A little bit more sun at the end of the day.
Yes, the day's feeling longer, right.
Exactly, and will help us cope with those couple of days of snow. So
there you go.
Yeah. Thanks, Colette. When we come back, Day 5 at the Beijing Paralympics. We're going to bring you the highlights. Stay with us. Welcome back. Canada added to the medal count on day 5 at the Beijing Paralympics, sprinting to 2 golds and a bronze in para cross country. And that takes the overall total to 16 medals in these games so far. And here's the CBC's Devin Haru with a roundup of the day's competition.
Away they go.
That's now 5 consecutive days Canadian Paralympians have reached the podium to begin the Paralympics here in Beijing. And once again, it was Canada's most decorated Winter Paralympian, Brian McKeever, leading the way. A gold medal in the sprint event today alongside his guide, Russell Kennedy. McKeever, the 42-year-old from Canmore, was absolutely brilliant in warm conditions, slushy snow. But like so many times throughout his career, he reached the finish line first. His 15th gold medal at the Paralympics, the 19th of his career in what he calls his final games. He's won 2 gold medals already. We should also talk about Natalie Wilkie. She's won 2 gold medals here at the Paralympics, finishing first in the sprint event as well, and Colin Cameron in the sitting sprint event, winning his 2nd bronze medal of the game. So that's 3 more medals for Team Canada, the medal tally now at 16. Right here inside the ice cube, a superb day of curling for the Canadians on the pebbled ice. 2 crucial victories, a gutsy win over Great Britain and a dominant performance over Estonia here tonight, a 9-3 victory. So the Canadians are now 6-3 and poised for the playoffs. It's heating up as we approach day 6 here at the Paralympics. For CBC Sports, I'm Devin Haru in Beijing.
The wreckage of an historic ship has been found more than 100 years after it sank off Antarctica. The Endurance, captained by British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton, was found at 3,000 meters below the surface of the Weddell Sea. And it sank in 1915 after being trapped in sea ice for months. All 28 on board eventually made it to safety. The team that discovered the ship says it is in a perfect state of preservation, but they won't be trying to bring the ship or its contents to the surface. The wreck itself is a designated monument under an international treaty and must not be disturbed in any way. One reason why this year's search was successful is that this past month has seen the lowest extent of Antarctic sea ice ever recorded during the satellite era. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website. Just go to cbc.ca/Windsor. And we're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.